Hello and welcome to Turning Shit into Gold. This is question 1. What is the definition of abuse? I want to thank you for joining me. Please remember that I am not a counsellor or a relationship expert. By now you should have received your copy of this PDF. If not, please email me at tsigolden@outlook.com. All right, please turn the page. Here are the 7 questions that I will go through in a series of 7 different videos. So what is the definition of abuse? What types of people make up an abusive relationship? Do you think an abuser can change? Does the victim play a role in the domestic violence situation? Why does the victim stay? What are some red and green flags when you're dating? And how do you help yourself or someone to leave safely? Now, also below are some emergency contact numbers in Australia. I want to express that I am not a counsellor or relationship expert, and I also want to express that abuse does not discriminate. So if you've heard my story, you know that I have been abused by both male and female when I was in a relationship by a family member. Abuse can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. Please turn the page. I also want to let you know that I have had normal relationships. And in normal relationships, you do argue, or you can argue, you can separate, and you can even walk away regretting some of the things that you've done and said, but it's not abuse. So the definition of an abuser is somebody who treats others with cruelty and violence regularly or repeatedly. Abusive relationships are characterised by control, games, violence, jealousy, and withholding emotional contact. An emotionally abusive person is harder to pinpoint. This person can easily make you think you are not good enough or that everything is your fault. It is just as difficult to recover from physical abuse as it is emotional abuse, and love is respectful. I want to try and explain to you the complex nature of abuse. So, unfortunately, again, an abuser has a game plan long before you ever see it coming, and they will abuse you in many different ways in the hour, the day, the month, or the year. Unfortunately, the abuse does escalate when you leave. She said abuse is extremely hard to prove. So they could put write a death threat on your computer, but prove it. So they will use any of the 6 areas below, and they will use different actions in those 6 areas. So we have coercive control, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, psychological abuse, and verbal abuse. And although each area is as debilitating and terrifying as each other, some are easier to understand and to prove. For example, unfortunately, with physical abuse, you will have the scars to show. With financial abuse, you could have the documents. With verbal abuse, it could be in writing, or you could have a witness. Don't get me wrong, an abuser will manipulate and control and lie to get away with any area of abuse. Confusion, being confused, is a sign that you are being abused. Abuse can be hidden or it can be open. And the hidden abuse can be hidden behind normal behaviour. They will use reasonable excuses, but you know something is off. So you will be abused openly, and they will also use hidden abuse. So let's look at the indicators of sneaky abuse. Please turn the page. So sneaky abuse includes psychological abuse, coercive control, and emotional abuse. If I had my time over, I would write down all of the 6 areas of abuse, and then I would write down each action my abuser used. Even if they had a reasonable excuse, I would put it into each area. You will be shocked at how controlled and manipulated you are. You can take off 20% for normal behaviour, but the rest is abuse. So let me give you an example of the indicators for psychological abuse. They will use body gestures such as eye contact to control you. They will refuse to talk to you or make eye contact. Now, an example of that is they could invite you out for dinner and you're all excited to go, and then when you get there, suddenly they withdraw and they don't talk to you. It's like you're sitting with a different person and you ask them what's wrong, but they can't explain what's wrong with them. So you know that something's off, and you're left feeling sad at this dinner. And then what they do is they pretend they can't hear you from a room, or you walk up to them to give them a cuddle and they give you this emotional distance where they just don't hold your hand, or they don't respond. Now, don't get me wrong, normal people do those things, but you will have the open behaviour as well. And as I said, writing them down, you will see that there is a lot of this going on. It's not about having an off day. It's about controlling you with emotional distance. So sulking, strutting or stomping out, crossed arms, rolling eyes or frowning, hitting or kicking something, driving recklessly to scare you. Now look, normal people drive recklessly, but they respect your needs. They don't set out to create fear. I know in one instance where a victim told the abuser how they were frightened because they'd had a car accident. They'd actually been T-boned in this car accident, and the abuser used to drive to imitate that car accident. So they would be on a roundabout and a vehicle would pull out and the abuser would speed up to create fear. And then they would use sort of reasonable excuses, saying it wasn't my fault that they pulled out. But they were driving recklessly to create fear, and they would not respect the needs of the passenger, who is constantly sitting there pumping air brakes and begging them to slow down. Okay, so you can have withdrawing or withholding contact to punish you, the silent treatment, interrupting, ignoring, not listening or refusing to respond, playing the victim, yelling, swearing or shouting or put downs to shut you up. Insulting you is another form of abuse. Now, there's a difference between being insulted and somebody having a joke that you take offence to or ribbing you. So when you're insulted, you feel it hurts you in your core. And normally, if somebody insults you and you say, "Oh, that hurt my feelings," they'll stop. But an abuser will not stop. They will say, "Oh, you're too sensitive." So they will put the blame back on you. If you feel like you can't do anything right, like everything is your fault, or as if you're going crazy, you're in a constant state of confusion, look out for the signs of abuse. Please turn the page. Thank you. Coercive control. Okay, so over in the UK at the moment, these are the 11 things that are illegal to do. We are working on our coercive control laws here in Australia at the moment, but I wanted to share these with you, and I wanted to give you those normal examples again of a hidden control. So coercive control includes restricting or controlling money, demanding receipts with no punitive allowances, even if you are the breadwinner. Now, it doesn't need to be that obvious. It could be you're going on holidays together and they say to you, "You know what, let's just have $200 a day to spend." And you think, "Oh yes, okay, that sounds reasonable." So off you go on your holiday. What they do is they ask you 6, 7, 8 times a day, "How much money do we have left? How much have we spent now?" They won't allow any leftover money to go to the next day, or they don't allow that you just spend 400 one day and none the next. They also complain about what you buy with your own money. It's not about control. It's about control. It's not about concern for your budget. So looking at the many different ways that they control you, they could ask you, demand receipts and things like that. But again, look at those sneaky hidden ways that they do it. All right, so sharing private images as a form of revenge, repeated put-downs, persistent name-calling, mocking or insulting you, stopping you from seeing your friends or family, blocking emails, telling you where you can and can't go. Doesn't need to be that obvious. Some abusers have to hide their abuse. They can't be obvious with it because of their situation. You know, if it's in the family, they don't want the other family members to think badly of them, so they will show more abuse towards you. But stopping you from seeing your family and friends doesn't have to be as obvious as that. It could be that they're not present. You know, when you go to a party, they'll stand in the background, or if, you know, there's a birth, suddenly they're not there. They decide to take that particular moment to go and get a coffee. Or they treat your celebrations and your heartaches differently to how they treat their best mates. They could start an argument with you 10 minutes before you get to the function so that you look like you're the cranky one, and they could put time limits on the event. So it's like, we are leaving at 10 o'clock, things like that. So they scare you. It might not be physical. Angry gestures, destroying possessions, punching holes in walls, threatening to kill you or your pets. I know a victim that was more scared of an abuser that never laid a hand on them than they were of an abuser who had physically assaulted them. They threaten to reveal private things about you or your health. They put tracking devices on your home. They spy on your Facebook messages, or they insist they track you. They are extremely jealous, including possessiveness. They make you obey their rules. You feel like you don't have a choice in their decision. So you might say no to something. Say you're selling a home and you might say, no, I don't want to sell it, but they will be persistent until you agree. You really do feel like you don't have a choice. They control what you wear, who you see, where you go. They force you to do things you don't want to do, commit crimes, neglect or abuse children. So, as I said before, coercive control over in the UK can bring up to 14 years in prison. Okay, turn the page, please. Emotional abuse. So emotional abuse is gaslighting. And how do you know whether someone is gaslighting you? Gaslighting is so harmful. It promotes anxiety, depression, and with enough frequency in our lives, it can sometimes trigger a nervous breakdown. So the question now is, are you being gaslighted? How can you know whether you're experiencing this subtle form of manipulation in your life? So review the following telltale signs. I'm just going to summarize, but you have this PDF to go through it all. But you know that something is off. You say, oh, I don't believe that it happened like that. You feel threatened. You can't speak your mind. You feel as if you're just not good enough. It doesn't matter what you do. Nothing you do will be as good as what they do it. You feel like you're going crazy because you don't remember the events as they do. You feel sad and you cry a lot. And you know that you would never treat them the way they treat you. You become silent, not expressing your needs or your emotions, so you shut down. That's one of the things that I really regret. I wish that I had have told people exactly how I was feeling. They will tell you you're too sensitive, you're too trusting, you're too naive, and they didn't mean it the way that you took it, that it's not a big deal. You sound like you're crazy, you're imagining things, but you know and you feel the truth. And they are very convincing. In the end, when it's all over, you don't trust yourself. You don't trust anything that comes out of anyone's mouth. So your own intuition is destroyed because of this crazy making, this gaslighting. Okay, the last area of abuse is reactive abuse. Now look, nobody is perfect, but with reactive abuse, you are pushed to your limits. You do and say things that you normally wouldn't do. I've come across many victims who have done and said things that they are so ashamed of. And in all reality, they are ashamed of it because it's not who they are. Your abuser needs you to look as bad as them. They need you to do things that you would normally wouldn't do. Look at your other relationships. How do you react in those? If the answer is no, not unless I'm backed in a corner, then you could be reacting to the games they play. I wish I had walked away. I think my neighbours thought I was the abusive one. He would torment me quietly with a smile on his face until I would explode. And I would slam doors and I would call him names. But you know what? I have forgiven myself for that behaviour because I now look at and know the abuse that I went through. So reactive abuse is a pathological people will do things to get a reaction from you. They will sometimes antagonise you so fiercely that you end up losing your cool. And then you start raging at them. Then they point the finger at you and accuse you of being the abusive one. This can happen so often that victims start to feel like they are the abusive as well. Everyone has their limit, and some people can blatantly overstep your boundaries in such a way that it pushes you to fight back to keep any semblance of self-respect. Narcissistic individuals use that to try to convince you that you are the problem and you are the one that is crazy and abusive. Do not let them confuse you. You are reacting to the abuse. You are not the abuser. That is the end of question 1. What is the definition of abuse? Remember what I said about doing up a checklist and writing down the areas of abuse and then the actions that are in there, normal and open and hidden actions. Write them all down and you will have a clear picture of what is going on in your relationship. Please, whatever you do, remember to do it safely. And I'll join you for question 2. What types of people make up an abusive relationship? Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.